Because I think there's nothing wrong with having big goals, but I think the problem is that big goals on their own don't really do anything. They don't inspire any action today. So if your goal is like, well, one day I'm going to be a billionaire, well, what does that tell you to do right now? Nothing.
시대에 뒤처지지 않고 어디에서도 성공을 이뤄내는 사람들이 가진 능력은 바로 학습 능력입니다.
As soon as I start talking about learning, some of you are going to automatically think school. And that's unfortunate, not because school isn't important or it doesn't matter, but because it's just such a narrow part of what I'm talking about when I talk about learning.
혼자서 계속해서 배우고 배운 것을 적용하는 능력이야말로 정보가 넘쳐나는 지금 시대에 살아남는 방법이죠.
Being able to teach yourself complex skills and big ideas is going to be essential to stay ahead.
수조원 자산가 피터 티엘은 1억 원을 일정 기준에 부합한 학생에게 주기로 했는데 학점이 높은 학생이 아니었습니다.
So billionaire investor Peter Thiel now gives a $100,000 scholarship to students not to go to school, but to drop out and start something interesting.
Ultra Learning의 저자 스캇은 비즈니스를 전공하면서 컴퓨터 공학에 대한 마음도 갖고 있었습니다. 근데 자신에게 필요한 것은 컴퓨터 공학 학위를 줄 학교가 아닌 컴퓨터 공학 교육이라는 것을 알게 됐죠.
I'd managed to narrow down my choice of major to two choices, business and computer science. I was really interested in both, so business it was. And after graduating, I have no regrets. I learned a lot and I had a great time. But after finishing my education, I had this longing for the path not taken. I really wanted to learn computer science. But going back to school didn't appeal to me. 4 more years of my life, acceptance boards, tuition bills. I didn't want to postpone my life and rack up debt just to pursue a curiosity. I wanted the education, not the school.
무료로 제공하는 강의들을 엮어 MIT에서 컴퓨터 공학을 전공한 학생들이 듣는 수업 커리큘럼과 비슷하게 짜서 컴퓨터 공학을 독학합니다.
So I was able to build a curriculum of 33 classes that, with 1 or 2 minor exceptions, was identical to the course list an MIT student would use. And I was able to build this using only MIT's free online available information. The only cost was for a few textbooks, which meant I could follow this entire program for under $2,000.
물론 MIT 공대를 직접 다니는 것과는 달랐습니다.
Now for the hard part, actually learning MIT classes. I'm not kidding myself, MIT is a really hard school. It's notoriously difficult, even for bright students. And what's more, I'm not going to have the help of faculty and professors and classmates that I can easily get help from. So, in theory, the project's doable, but would it just be too difficult in practice?
스캇이 그렇게 혼자서 스스로를 가르쳤던 방법 중 핵심 내용 한 가지를 알려드리겠습니다. 타임 로그인데요.
I found I was able to learn faster using this approach than I ever had while in university. So far from being an obstacle, it turned out that not going to MIT had made my job a lot easier. An MIT student has access to everything I do and much, much more. How can I possibly have an advantage over a student when I have fewer resources? So there's a tool called a time log. And here's how the time log works. You jot down the starting and the stopping times for every activity you do. And I mean every activity, from when you wake up in the morning to when you take out the garbage. Now, my guess is that most of you here have never done a time log before, because you can just imagine how irritating that is to do. But if you do one, the results can be eye-opening. So here's a recent Wall Street Journal article where the reporter did just that. She writes, I soon realized I'd been lying to myself about where the time was going. What I thought was a 60-hour work week wasn't even close. I would have guessed I spent hours doing the dishes when in fact I spent minutes. I spent long stretches of time lost on the internet or puttering around the house, unsure exactly what I was doing.
많은 시간을 쓰고 있다고 착각하는 것과 실제로 많은 시간을 쏟는 것은 다릅니다.
And I can say the situation is even worse for students. The vast majority of time a student spend isn't spent learning, it's spent commuting to class, copying notes at Starbucks, and trying to stay awake in lectures. If you could total up the amount of time that a student spends forming new insights and remembering facts, which is of course what learning is, it would be tiny. And for the most part, this isn't even students' fault. After all, entrepreneurs often notice a startling difference in their productivity at a startup versus a big firm. Big institutions mean bureaucracy, they mean paperwork, they mean doing what you're told instead of what's important.
스캇이 4년짜리 MIT 컴퓨터 공학 수업을 1년 만에 끝낸 방법입니다.
So when I would do MIT lectures, when I started doing the classes, I would watch them at 1.5 times the speed. Now, this may sound very difficult, but the difference is barely audible in human speech. And of course, if it goes too fast, you just hit rewind. Students in a regular classroom don't have access to a fast forward or rewind button, even though I'm guessing most of them would like one. And the impact of this isn't trivial. By being able to watch lectures at a slightly faster pace and watching them sequentially, I was able to take classes that normally span 4 months and watch them in 2 days of real time. When I would do hard MIT assignments, I would do the questions with the solution key in hand, one question at a time. Because it's tight feedback loops like this that cognitive scientists recognize as being critical to learning. I've passed those final exams, and I did the programming projects associated with those classes. And what's more, because of speed-ups like this that I've mentioned, I'm on track to finishing the program in 12 months instead of 4 years. I believe self-education is the future. If a person like me can learn an MIT degree in 1/4 of the time and 1/100th of the financial cost, what's to stop you from doing it too?